The video was only 14 seconds long, blurry, wind in the mic, but clear enough to destroy everything. My husband, his hands on her waist, her lips grazing his neck, laughing, like I never existed. It was sent from a private account, no name, no warning, just one line underneath. Your well-wisher. I was setting the dinner table for my girls, just another ordinary Tuesday night in our quiet, carefully built world, when my phone buzzed. I assumed it was something routine, a message from the driver, or maybe a school update. But what I saw next would change everything forever. The beach in the background was unfamiliar, but the faces weren't. Nick, my husband, the man the media adored as the kindest CEO in New York, was wrapped around his marketing manager like they were on their honeymoon. The light in his eyes, the one I used to think was reserved for me, was shining full force on her. It wasn't a slip-up. It was a declaration. And what broke me wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease of it all. They looked so comfortable together, so practiced. Like this wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness, but something they'd done 100 times before. But someone was watching. Someone close enough to record it all. I stared at the screen long enough for the video to loop 3 times. On the 4th loop, I turned the volume up. His laugh was there. A laugh I hadn't heard at home in months. My daughter's voices floated in from the other room.
Mom.
Dinner's ready. I swallowed hard and slipped the phone into my purse. The pasta was probably cold by now. I pulled the mask back on, the one I'd worn more times than I could count, and walked into the dining room with a smile I didn't feel. Come eat, girls, I said, as casually as I could manage. Your father's just caught up with work. They sat around the table, laughing and chatting like everything was normal. I joined them, sitting right in the middle, but I couldn't taste a thing. My body was there, but my mind was still back on that beach. Then my phone buzzed again, and everything got worse. 30 minutes later, another video arrived. This time, it was Nick and Cassidy in his car. She was in his lap, arms around his neck, and he was holding her like the world outside didn't exist. The location tag said Upper East Side, just 10 minutes from her home. So this wasn't some distant, guilt-ridden getaway. This was local. This was routine. This was their habit. The messages kept coming throughout the evening, always from the same anonymous account. But the angles were too perfect, too intimate. This wasn't a stranger with a camera. This was someone Nick trusted. Someone who'd been watching, waiting, building a case. The question wasn't just why they were helping me, it was why they wanted Nick destroyed. I'm Claire Whitmore. And if betrayal makes your blood boil, if you believe silence can be louder than screams, hit subscribe. Because someone was watching, and they weren't done. Everyone knew. Everyone but me. The betrayal wasn't quiet. It was practically public. And somehow, I was the last to accept it. That night, Nick came home late. I asked about his day with a voice I barely recognized, measured, emotionless, like I'd practiced it in front of a mirror. He responded with the usual script, meetings, stress, too much going on. Then he kissed my cheek, quick, mechanical, like he was checking something off a list, and walked straight to bed. But I wasn't done investigating. Not by a long shot. The house went still. The bedroom dipped in the soft blue-gray of the streetlight, and the pressure in my chest became unbearable. I got up, quiet and careful, like someone afraid to wake the truth. In the dressing room, I found the shirt he'd worn that day still folded in the laundry basket. I picked it up, hoping for nothing.
Just a scent, maybe.
But there it was, just inside the collar. A faint trace of red lipstick. A color I never wore. A stain that said more than any text, any rumor, any suspicion. The evidence was small. But in that silence, it screamed. I stood frozen in the doorway. My knees didn't buckle. They locked. My mouth tasted like blood and toothpaste. Still, I came back to bed. Not to fight. Not to scream. Just to make sure. He was already under the covers, scrolling his phone like nothing had changed. I slipped beneath the sheets, careful, quiet, trying not to sound like heartbreak. Then, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I reached for his arm. Just lightly. Just enough to say, "Please tell me this is all a mistake." He flinched, like my touch was too heavy. Then, he gently peeled my fingers off his skin. "I'm tired," he muttered. No kiss. No questions. Just those two words, tossed over his shoulder like I was a loose thread in his sweater. He turned away, and something inside me turned off. That was my last offer. My last mercy. If Nick had done this, if he had really done this, then I wouldn't care anymore. Not about this marriage. Not about appearances. Not about consequences. Anything. The next morning, I made the call that would change everything. Margot Hart, a private investigator known for digging up truths best left hidden. "Nick Arden," I said, voice steady. "Consider it done," she replied. Within 24 hours, her report arrived. And what I discovered made my blood run cold. Cassidy Vance, the ambitious marketing manager with her arms wrapped around Nick in the video, was the kind of woman who knew how to charm a room and a boardroom. She didn't just know how to climb the ladder, she built new rungs as she went. But the real shocker came on page 12. There were expense reports tied to dummy accounts. Flights booked under false names. Luxury hotels paid for by the company, disguised as client meetings. And every request had one thing in common: Nick's signature. It wasn't just an affair. It was embezzlement. A carefully protected game they'd both played while I looked the other way. But I didn't cry or scream. I said nothing. No confrontation. No dramatic showdown. Instead, I studied every page, every transaction, every lie. And when I closed the file, I knew exactly what I had to do. That evening, I opened my laptop, created an anonymous private Instagram account, and sent the beach party clip to every media outlet that mattered. By noon, his world would be burning, and I was just lighting the first match. The next morning, Nick moved through his routine like muscle memory: shower, shave, suit, tie. The rhythm of a man still worshipped by the world. Respected.
Feared.
Admired. As if nothing had cracked. As if the rot hadn't already begun to seep through the shine. I'd been up for hours, preparing his downfall. Downstairs, the smell of toast and coffee hung in the air. I stood by the kitchen island, flawless in my morning routine, not a strand out of place. Not a flicker of tension. Nick walked in, sipping his black coffee, checking nothing. Because nothing buzzed. Nothing pinged. Normally, he'd scroll through emails, skim market alerts, reply to texts from Mike or his team. But today, the screen of his phone remained black.
Still.
Mute. I had pulled his phone from the charger at 4 a.m., turned off every notification, email, messages, Slack, calendar, news alerts. He never set a lock, said it slowed him down. I used that speed against him and left the device exactly where he always found it. "Busy day?" I asked, placing a plate in front of him. He nodded, eyes half on the toast. "Board meeting at 10. Might run long." He kissed my cheek, quick, mechanical. Just like the last time, only this time I was smiling inside. He grabbed his phone and walked out the door, still completely unaware. No alarms. No headlines. No warning. Little did he know I was 3 steps ahead. The door had barely clicked shut when the house phone rang, an old landline we kept for emergencies, barely used. I answered, my voice calm. "Hello." Mike's voice erupted like a fire alarm. Sharp, frantic, unstoppable. "Get him to the office.
Now."
Tell him to turn on the news." It was Mike Drenner, owner of A-Tech, Nick's mentor, the man who once toasted him as the future of the company. But what came next was pure poetry. I held the phone out. "Nick, it's Mike." "He sounds urgent." Nick frowned, took the call, and the color drained from his face. Whatever Mike was saying, it hit hard. His expression shifted from confusion to panic. He muttered, "Shit," grabbed his jacket, and rushed out the door without finishing his breakfast. Tires screeched. The car was gone in seconds. I stood there unmoved. I let the silence settle, let the coffee grow cold. Then I exhaled, a long, quiet breath like the kind you release after holding it in for too long. Every cheater thinks he's clever. Every liar thinks he's in control. Until he meets a woman who knows how to play the long game. By noon, The headlines exploded. Screens lit up like sirens. Nick Arden's beach affair goes viral. Tech CEO's perfect image shattered. Cassidy Vance, the woman behind the scandal. Everywhere I looked, his carefully curated reputation was crumbling. And I just watched. But just when I thought it was all exposed, a new voice entered the scene. That afternoon, while the media circus raged, another video arrived. This one was different, darker. Nick and Cassidy weren't just having an affair, they were planning. The audio was crystal clear this time, recorded from inside a restaurant booth. Claire doesn't suspect anything. Nick's voice came through perfectly. She's too busy playing housewife to notice the real business. Cassidy's laugh was sharp.
Good.
Because when the Miami deal closes, we'll have enough to disappear. Just you, me, and 50 million in offshore accounts. My hands shook as I realized the truth. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to leave me with nothing. I had packed a small bag and left the house with the girls that same afternoon. No dramatic exit. No slammed doors. Just quiet, deliberate movements. We drove to my friend Maya's, somewhere warm. Somewhere the air didn't reek of lies. When Margot called with updates, I gave her the new address.
She didn't ask why.
She didn't have to. But what she told me next changed everything. An hour later, she showed up with a thick folder in hand. Evidence she'd been quietly compiling for days. Photos. Receipts. Forwarded emails. Each page another thread in the web Nick had spun, and now was trapped in. There's more, Margot said, her voice unusually tense. The person sending you those videos? They're not just watching from the outside. They're inside ATEC, high up. And they want Nick gone as much as you do. The mystery ally wasn't just helping me. They were using me as their weapon of choice. That evening, Nick finally called. His voice was soft, pleading. I let it ring.
Once. Twice.
5 times. But I didn't answer. I had no words for the man who cracked our world open and watched it bleed. When he called again, I picked up. His voice came through tight.
Strained.
Like someone trying not to drown. Claire, the board's panicking. The stock's down 15%. Every outlet's got the footage. The timelines.
Names.
It's coordinated. I said nothing. The sound of my breath, slow and even, filled the gap where his justifications used to live. If you know who's behind this, help me stop it. I spoke calmly, without emotion. I didn't build this mess, Nick. I'm just making sure no one gets to sweep it under the rug this time. Then I hung up. By next dawn, every women's group in the country had made me their mascot. By noon, I disappeared. Not out of fear, out of strategy. I left the girls with Camille, Maya's sister, calm and competent, under the soft pretense of needing rest. No one questioned it. Grief looks different on everyone. Then I quietly slipped away, unseen, and checked into a private wing of St. Lucia's Memorial. What I did next was calculated, brilliant, and absolutely devastating. Officially, nervous breakdown. Unofficially, controlled silence. I passed through security in dark glasses, a baseball cap pulled low. The admission nurse never even looked up. Money doesn't just buy privacy, it makes you invisible. The hospital was secure, unlisted. Every detail paid in full under an alias. From the crisp white sheets of my hospital bed, I made 5 calls, all encrypted. All to people who owed me, not Nick. People who remembered old favors, old alliances. Then came my final move, the one that would rewrite everything. Every move was rehearsed. This wasn't a breakdown, it was performance art. Scripted with precision, staged with vengeance. And the man who shattered my trust, my home, my peace, he wouldn't just be exposed. He would be erased. I balanced the phone against the IV pole, set a timer, and slipped back into the bed. It took 3 tries to get the angle right. As I positioned the phone, my hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the adrenaline of knowing this single image would rewrite everything. I thought about every woman who'd been dismissed, every wife who'd been discarded. This wasn't just my revenge. This was a reckoning for all of us. From the same anonymous Instagram account I'd used before, I uploaded a single photo, strategically timed, crafted to look like it had been leaked.
Me.
Lying in the hospital bed, skin pale, lips cracked, an IV snaking from my arm, eyes vacant.
Defeated.
A woman crushed beneath the weight of betrayal. No caption, no hashtags, no location tag. It didn't need one. The image said everything. Within 12 minutes, it was on every major news outlet. News panels zoomed in, speculated on everything from the angle of the IV drip to the emptiness in my eyes. Gossip blogs followed, spinning theories faster than facts. TikTokers made emotional edits set to sad piano music. Claire Whitmore collapses under the weight of betrayal. Billionaire's wife hospitalized amid explosive cheating scandal. From glamorous to ghost, the homemaker the nation failed. But here's what no one saw coming. The photo didn't spark pity. It ignited fury. Morning talk shows cried into their coffee mugs. Think pieces exploded overnight. Emotional labor, invisible wives, performative husbands. Women rallied around me like I was their sister.
Men?
Awkward silence. A few even issued public statements, scrambling to distance themselves from Nick. But let's be clear, I wasn't playing the victim. I was orchestrating a war. Let the world tear him apart for me. Let them tweet, march, and dissect every frame. Let brands quietly pull away from his name. While I stayed silent, still, untouchable. Because sometimes the most devastating strike is the one wearing a hospital bracelet and whispering, "I'm not okay." Even when you are. Especially when you are. Nick called. Again and again. 6 times, to be exact. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts.
Panicked.
Apologetic. Desperate. I left them all on read. Except one. He wrote, "You didn't answer, Claire. I saw the photo. You looked empty, like the life had left you. But you don't break, Claire. If even you look broken, I think I've done something I can't fix." I read it once. Then locked the screen. No reply. Let him sit in the silence he once left me in. While I stayed out of sight, Maya stepped forward. She handled the interviews with surgical precision. She didn't name him. She didn't have to. She looked the cameras dead in the eye and said, "Claire trusted someone deeply. And that trust cost her everything. Her health, her dignity, her privacy. But she's getting stronger." The room went silent after she spoke. Even the host, usually polished and smiling, faltered for a moment. They ate it up. Every word. The narrative slipped out of Nick's hands and wrapped itself around mine. I became the story. Not the broken wife, but the mirror held up to 1,000 hidden betrayals. And Cassidy Vance? She vanished from the spotlight she used to crave. No smug posts. No statements. No curated beach photos. Because there's no PR strategy for a woman the world already pities. While they dissected my trauma, I planned my next move. While they speculated if I'd forgive him, I calculated how far I'd take this. And while Nick tried to call again and again and again, I stayed quiet, wrapped in white linen, bathed in borrowed light, becoming something more dangerous than a woman scorned, a woman reimagined. By mid-morning, the ripple had reached corporate. ATEC's board released a statement at 11 a.m. "We are looking into recent revelations and remain committed to ethical leadership." Translation? They were preparing to cut him loose. But the best part was yet to come. Meanwhile, online petitions called for Nick's resignation. Stockholders began selling. Corporate sponsors withdrew deals. And my inbox? Flooded. Women thanking me. Men apologizing on behalf of men. Former interns from ATEC reaching out, anonymously, at first, confirming suspicions I hadn't even spoken aloud. That evening, fresh from the hospital, I sank into Maya's lounge chair. Maya turned up the volume. A CNN anchor's voice cut through the room. "Sources say Claire Arden never signed a prenup. If proceedings begin, she could become one of the wealthiest women in the country overnight." But I didn't smile, because it was never about money. It was about truth and watching his empire crumble, brick by brick. Nick hadn't slept in days. And it showed. Bloodshot eyes. Wrinkled collar. The confident gait of a boardroom alpha now reduced to cautious steps and bowed shoulders. He sat across from my attorney, Daniel Reese, a man known in legal circles for smiling while carving up billionaires.
Calm. Precise.
Utterly unshakable, Daniel placed the offer down gently. A slim folder. Nothing flashy. Just numbers and consequences. If you want a clean exit, Daniel said, this is your window. Claire's been merciful. Court won't be. Nick blinked. Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he continued, voice low. Your brand is bleeding. You've already been pushed out. That was the board's damage control, not mercy. But if this goes to discovery, 5 years of offshore accounts go public. That's not just ATEC gone. That's your future gone. A pause. Then, you'll sign a postnup. Claire gets equity, assets, full custody. You walk away quietly. No trial. No memoirs. No interviews. Just out. Nick exhaled shakily. He had spent years building ATEC, years crafting his image, climbing the ladder, silencing whispers. And I, the quiet woman with homemade pasta, family photo albums, and thank you cards to the housekeepers, had brought it all down without raising my voice.
He signed.
With trembling hands. No eye contact. No protest. Just a pen, a signature, and the quiet death of his empire. I didn't show up at the signing. I didn't need to. My attorney sent the final terms. I was resting officially, unavailable for comment. Unofficially, I was already planning my foundation for women erased behind powerful men. With a net worth now in the hundreds of millions and a nation of silent supporters behind me, I was starting something unstoppable. Not everyone turned their backs during the chaos. Mike Drenner, Nick's former mentor and the founder of ATEC, was one of the few who didn't look away. Long before headlines, he'd quietly stepped back from day-to-day operations. But when the scandal broke, Mike reappeared like a storm front. He publicly condemned Nick's actions. Privately, he reached out to me. A short message. No pity, just strength. If you need anything, I'm here.
And he meant it.
When the board moved to erase Nick and rebuild ATEC's image, Mike made sure my girls and I were protected, legally, financially, even emotionally. And then came Tom. Not with sympathy, not with shelter, with truth. A message buzzed in late at night. A name I barely remembered, Tom Alvarez, Nick's former colleague. I know things you deserve to know. Let's meet. We met at a quiet cafe 3 weeks after the settlement. The man across from me, Tom Alvarez, looked older than I remembered, a little thinner around the eyes, but there was a calmness in his shoulders I hadn't seen before. I need you to know something, Claire, he said, stirring his tea slowly. Those videos you received, the anonymous messages. My heart stopped. What about them? That was me. The air between us tightened.
I didn't know what to say.
I worked under Nick for 9 years, Tom said quietly. Built that firm with him, put in the hours, the loyalty, the blind faith. And then one meeting, one disagreement. He fired me in front of the entire boardroom. Brutal.
Public.
No warning. I stayed silent. He continued, eyes downcast, voice steady. But even before that, I knew about him and Cassidy. Everyone did. The whispers, the late-night strategy sessions, the closed-door meetings. It was an open secret. I clenched my jaw, but didn't interrupt. I didn't do it for revenge, he said, finally looking up. Not just revenge. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and slid it across the table. A printed message, signed at the bottom in his handwriting. Claire, I know what you gave up for that man. An Ivy League degree. A rising career. 2 beautiful girls who deserved your full attention. You sacrificed it all to stand behind him. And he made a fool of you. This wasn't just about justice.
It was about respect.
You deserve the truth. You deserve the chance to rise. I only hope what I sent you gave you back your voice. I looked up, and for the first time in weeks, the ache in my chest softened. Tom hadn't just exposed a cheater or a thief. He had handed me the match, and I had lit the fire. 1 year later, I was still gone. No interviews. No sightings. No statements. just whispers of a woman who vanished after the storm, raising her daughter's oceans away in quiet elegance. And then, without a single warning, came the book. No fanfare, no press release, just a white linen cover, left quietly at every major newsroom, bookstore, and courthouse. On its front, a black and white portrait of me, a woman with sad eyes, staring into some unknowable distance. The title? Unwritten. No author name, no blurbs, no marketing push. It hit bestseller lists within 72 hours. My face was suddenly everywhere again. Not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a voice. Talk show hosts wept reading Chapter 9. Teen girls underlined page 147. Airport terminals became confession booths, where strangers cried over shared pages. Critics called it devastatingly elegant. Professors taught it under modern feminist narrative. Inside, the pages bled emotion, but not bitterness. It was raw,
Intimate. Haunting.
a story of a woman who built her life around someone else's dreams, of sacrifices made in silence, of betrayal so precise it left no visible scars. The book never mentioned Nick, never described Cassidy, but it didn't have to. Every chapter whispered what the world had already guessed, except now. They didn't feel gossip. They felt grief. Sometimes the loudest women are called difficult, but the quiet ones, the ones who leave without screaming, they're the ones you never forget. And just as the world began to celebrate my rise, I made my move. A single post from a newly verified account. At The Real Claire Whitmore. Every woman writes her story twice. First for survival, then for power. Book 2, coming soon. And just like that, the world realized I hadn't vanished. I had been preparing for my second act, my real revenge, my true power. Because sometimes the most dangerous woman in the room is the one you dismissed, the one who turns her pain into purpose, her silence into strength, her ending into a beginning. If they thought betrayal would silence me, they've clearly never met a woman who knows her worth.